Hello children, today we will discuss part 2 of print culture and the modern world. But before that, let us have a recap of part 1 that we learned in earlier session. We learnt about earliest print in China and the print revolution. We talked about the religious debates and people who were fearful of print. Then we saw how reading mania took place in Europe, and we also tried to find out the role of print in French Revolution. Let us talk about today's main themes. Today we will discuss about the steps taken to popularize print and the innovations that took place in the field of print, how print came to India and its role in religious reforms in India. Then we will talk about the impact of print on women and workers. Finally, we will try to see the relationship between print and the censorship. Before moving ahead, let us discuss the learning outcomes. At the end of the session, students will be able to describe different steps to popularize print in Europe. Then they will be able to identify different innovations in the field of mechanical printing. They will be able to assess the impact of print on women and worker, and finally, they will be able to analyze the role of print in religious reforms. First of all, let us discuss the steps taken to popularize print among children. Anything that was considered unsuitable for children or it was thought to be vulgar, these things were not published as far as children are concerned. Children's press devoted to literature only for children was set up in France in 1857, and in Germany, Grimm brothers compiled traditional folk tales that they had gathered from peasants, and these steps were taken to popularize print among children. Now, let us look at which steps were taken to popularize print among women. First of all, let us talk about penny magazine. Penny magazine was published from 1832 to 1835 in England by the Society for the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge. Basically, manuals teaching proper behavior and housekeeping was published in England. Women became important readers as well as writers. For example, Jane Austen, Bronte sisters, George Eliot wrote many novels where the main character was women. Women depicted as a person with will, a strength of personality, determination and power to think was portrayed now on. If we talk of workers, various steps were taken to popularize print among workers. For example, lending libraries were established for educated white collar workers, artisans and lower middle class people. Working days were shortened so that people could get more time to read. Workers got time for self improvement, at the same time they got a chance for self expression. There were many self educated working class people who wrote about the problems of workers and they became very popular. On the basis of learning till now, let us do an activity. Here you can see an image of advertisement at a railway station in England. Look at this image and tell us what impact do such advertisements have on the mind of public. Do you think everyone reacts to printed material in the same way? Express your views before your class, before your colleagues. Now, let us talk about innovations in the field of print. There was a gentleman called Richard M. Hoe of New York. He perfected the power driven cylindrical press, which was capable of printing 8,000 sheets per hour. In late 19th century, offset press developed to print up to 6 colors at a time. Earlier, it was printed only in black and white. In 20th century, electrically operated presses which accelerated the printing operation came into being, and methods of filling paper improved, the quality of plate became better, automatic paper reels were introduced, and printing became up to date modern. Now, new strategies were adopted to sell books because lot many books were printed now. For example, in 19th century, periodicals and serialized novels were published. In 1920s in England, popular works sold in cheap series which was known as shilling series. Then books were covered in dust cover. At the same time, book jacket was also invented in 28th century. At the same time, books were sold in paperback editions. So, these were the new strategies to sell books in the market. Let us do an activity which is again related to advertisement. Talk to your parents and find out which platforms are available for advertisement in today's world. What impact do advertisements have on the minds of people? Do you think everyone reacts to printed material in the same way now also? Let us talk about the manuscripts before the age of print, because manuscripts were written with hand. In India, manuscripts were written in Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian and various other vernacular languages. They were copied on palm leaves or on handmade papers. Sometimes the pages of the manuscripts were beautifully illustrated also. They were pressed in between the wooden covers or sewn together to ensure their preservation for a long period of time. That was all about manuscripts, but there were many demerits of the manuscripts. For example, they were highly expensive because they were written by hand and it took lots of time for writing. At the same time, they were fragile because they were copied on palm leaves. They could not be read easily also because different people had different writing style and it was very difficult for the readers to read all the writing easily. So, these were the demerits. Combined with it needed to be handled very carefully because they were very fragile in nature. Let us talk about how print came to India. Print came to India in mid 16th century and first printing press was established in Goa by the Portuguese missionaries. The Jesuit press printed around 50 books in Konkani and Kannada language by 1674. In 1780, James Augustus Hickey, who himself was a British citizen, he published a weekly magazine in English called Bengal Gazette. If we talk of Indian language, the first Indian magazine that was published by the name of Bengal Gazette only was in Bengali and it was published by Gangadhar Bhattacharya. This is how print came to India. Now, let us do an activity which is known as word search. Here you can see a box and you will find 4 words in different colors in this box. What you are supposed to do is, you can see the 4 questions above. You have to find out the correct answer of one word from this box. Question number 1 is, where was the earliest kind of print technology developed? Number 2, where was a children's press established in 1857? Question 3, who developed the first known printing press in 1430s? And question number 4 is, which books were highly expensive and fragile? Now, let us talk about the religious reforms, public debates and their relationship with print. Now, after print came to India and books were printed in large numbers, new interpretations of the beliefs and different religions came into existence. The idea of new world that shaped the nature of debate and discussion started now on, and more people could participate in such public discussions because they were reading now, they were literate now. From there, it started the development and reform in Hinduism as well as Islam. So, there is a great relationship between print and Hinduism. There were 2 kinds of people existing in the society as far as Hinduism is concerned. Number 1, Hindu orthodoxy. Number 2, the religious reformers of Hinduism. As far as Hindu orthodoxy is concerned, they were supporters of matters like widow immolation, the sati pratha. They were against monotheism, and Brahmanical priesthood and idolatry was prevailing in the society. They commissioned a magazine called Samachar Chandrika to oppose the ideas of religious reformers. But then there were religious reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who wanted to improve the ideas of Hinduism. As a result, he started a newspaper called Sambad Kaumudi in 1821, and in 1822 he started 2 Persian newspapers called Jamaat-e-Jahannama and Samsul Akhbar. If we talk of print and Islam, ulemas of Islam feared conversion of Muslims. They were very fearful in change of Muslim personal law by the British. As a result, they started publishing Persian and Urdu translation of holy scriptures and started printing religious newspapers. Deoband Seminary, which was founded in 1867, published thousands of fatwas, and they started teaching Muslim readers how to conduct in everyday lives. They explained the meaning of Islamic doctrines to common Muslims, and in 19th century a number of Muslim sects and seminaries appeared throughout India. They were opposed to each other, their ideas were different from each other, and they wanted to increase their followers to counter the influence of their opponents, and Urdu print was available to them to maximize their ideas. Let us talk about relationship between print and people. Since the printed books were available in portable form, text could be read easily at any place and any time. They could be read out to a large group of illiterate people, and print was able to connect different communities and people in different parts of India. Newspapers conveyed news from one place to another place, and they were successful in creating pan-Indian identities of people. At the same time, various new forms of publications flooded the market. For example, novel. Writing of novel created a new world of experience and gave a vivid sense of diversity to human lives. Similarly, lyrics, short stories, essays about social and political matters were published and read widely. A new form of publication was caricature and cartoons. It ridiculed the Indians who used to copy the British style of living, their dressing sense, their food, etc. At the same time, paintings were made to shape the popular ideas about modernity and tradition, at the same time to maximize religious beliefs. If we talk of women and print, it made a lot of change in the life of women in India, because lives and feelings of women began to be written now and printed as well. Women's reading therefore increased enormously, especially in middle class homes where they were allowed to read to a certain extent. Many journals began carrying writings by women, and many women writers came up in our society as well. For example, Rasundari Devi, who was from Bengal and a middle class woman, she wrote her autobiography called Amar Jeevan, means my life. Then Ram Chadha published Stri Dharm Vichar to teach women how to be obedient wives. In Bengal, there was a place called Batala, which was totally developed to the printing of popular books. People like Tarabai Shinde and Pandita Ramabai wrote about the miserable lives of upper caste Hindu women, especially the widows. Kailas Vasni Devi wrote books highlighting the problems and experience of women inside homes. Now, the question is, did everyone welcome print for women? Answer is no and yes as well. Why yes? Because all families were not liberal. Conservative Hindus believed that literate girl would be widowed. As far as Muslims are concerned, they feared that educated women would be corrupted by reading Urdu romances. That is why they did not welcome print at all, and they did not like their girls to read. Now, let us do an activity. Look at the figures 1 and 2, figure number 1 and figure number 2. Look at them carefully and answer the following questions. What comment are the artists making on social changes taking place in society? Question number 2. What changes in society were taking place to provoke such reaction? And finally, do you agree with the artist's view shown in the image? Now, let us talk about print and common people, poor people. To popularize print among the poor people and the working class in India, cheap small books were sold at crossroads of the roads. Then public libraries were also set up so that a reading habit develops among the working people. People and leader like Jyotiba Phule wrote about the injustices of caste system in his book named Gulam Giri. Ambedkar and Periyar wrote on caste system. Kasi Baba, who himself was a meal worker, he wrote a book called Chote aur Bade Ka Sawal in 1938, and there was another meal worker from Kanpur known as Sudarshan Chakra. His poem was published and it was titled as Sachi Kavitaएं, in which he had written about the problems of the workers in India. At last, let us talk about print and censorship. Before the revolt of 1857, the British government in India was indifferent, rather supportive towards print. But after the revolt of 1857, which is known as the First War of Independence of India, the attitude to freedom of press changed completely, because the Englishmen got very angry and they started demanding a clampdown on the native press, as vernacular newspapers became assertively nationalist and they had started writing against the British government and its policies. Demand for freedom was increasing day by day. So, the British government tried to impose censorship on native press, and in 1878 the Vernacular Press Act was passed. From now on, the government kept a regular track on the vernacular newspapers published in different provinces of India, and when a report was judged as seditious or against the British government, the newspaper was warned, and if the warning was ignored and the news was printed, then the press was liable to be seized and the printing machinery confiscated. So, that was all about print and censorship. Let us talk about the last activity of the session. Answer the following questions with the help of given clue. Question number 1 is, what was copied on palm leaves or on handmade paper? It starts with letter M and ends with T. Question number 2, name the book written by Jyotiba Phule. The second letter is U and last but one letter is R. Question number 3, which press act was passed in 1878? The third letter is R and the last but one letter is A. You have to find out the name of the press act. So, children, we learnt about the print culture and the modern world. I would suggest you to do these activities very carefully, because they will maximize your learning. All the best.